What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the SI Sooners podcast. Parker, we are back where we started, which is Wednesday of a game week, and we're wondering, seriously, if we're going to have a game this week. What do you think?
Well, John, given that it's Wednesday and it's now within that 72-hour window to kickoff, I'm pretty confident we're going to have a game. Now, we've seen crazier things happen before, and we've heard Lincoln Riley say earlier in the year, they were, I think, 24 to 48 hours from the kickoff of the Missouri State and Kansas State games and still talking about canceling there. But I feel pretty good, especially with how heavily Lincoln Riley emphasized this week in press conferences that they need to play this game on Saturday for their own good. I think this one's going to get played.
I hope so. Got my reservations all made. I've been reading up on, having to travel, having to go into the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Guess what? If you're traveling for business, you don't need a COVID certification. You can go with COVID or whatever to go to Pennsylvania. That's where I'm flying into. It's right across the border from Morgantown. I don't know about the rules in Morgantown, though. I have to check into that one. I'm John Hoover. I'm in Tulsa, not in Morgantown yet. That is Parker Thune. He's in Norman. Appreciate you guys listening, as always, to the SI Sooners podcast and watching over at my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Check it out, allsooners.com. We drop a new podcast every Sunday, every Wednesday. This is the Wednesday version, by the way. Last I looked at my calendar. So listen, if you guys subscribe, you will get notifications when we drop a new podcast. If you subscribe over on the YouTube channel, you'll get a notification when I post there as well. We got the podcast going up there. We got a lot of other stuff going up there as well. Hey, Parker, as long as we're talking about playing games or not playing games, let's talk about the Big Ten real quick. Good Lord, what a fiasco that conference is. Okay, first of all, we're going to set the standard. We're going to be the first one out here. We're going to release a schedule. Oh, and now we're going to be the first one to cancel. We're going to cancel the season. No college football this year. Everybody follow our lead. We know what we're doing. Oh, so everybody else is going to play? Okay, fine. We'll play too. And you know what? We're going to establish a minimum number of games, 6 games to get into our Big Ten Conference Championship game. Oh, Ohio State's not going to make it? Yeah, we need to change that too. I thought, God, the Big 12 used to be reactive. Nobody has ever been reactive like the Big Ten is being reactive to this situation that we're in.
John, the Big Ten has blazed all the wrong trails this year, and you touched on all of them. Every single step that the Big Ten has taken, it's just like they're stepping further and further into quicksand. Nothing that they've done has garnered any amount of support across the country from other conferences, from the pundits, from the fans. I think everybody looks at the way that the Big Ten has handled COVID-19 and said, okay, you know what? For future reference, should we ever have another pandemic another century down the line, let's do the complete opposite of this, because whatever they did here and here and here and here didn't work at all. The Big Ten is a debacle right now, and I have no doubt, John, that it's going to be a point of contention between the College Football Playoff Selection Committee, even if Ohio State goes 6-0 and wins the Big Ten. 6-0, think about that. 6 games in a season. I'm almost certain that the College Football Playoff Committee is going to sit down on Selection Saturday or Selection Sunday or whatever day they technically make the picks and say, can we really put this team in the playoff with a 6-game schedule? And guess what? It's not Ohio State's fault. It's the Big Ten's fault.
They'll put Ohio State in because Ohio State brings more television dollars. It's nobody's going to want to watch a playoff with Coastal Carolina. And I say that, and then I find out today that the Coastal Carolina BYU game was ESPN's highest rated game of the year, highest rated college football game in several years, which is ridiculous. And a lot of that is BYU. Don't get it twisted. But no, they're gonna say Ohio State passes the eye test. And that's what I don't like. I tweeted that yesterday. That's what I don't like about the playoff. Establish a standard, okay? And the first standard is this, simple as this. You should have to earn your way into the playoff. You should have to earn your way to be one of the top 4 teams in college football. Earn it. Earn it. That's all you got to do. You play 6 games because your conference is full of, I don't know what you'd call it, people who don't see the future. Then maybe you shouldn't be considered, because there's teams right now that are playing 8 games, 9 games, 10 games, 11 games. They're managing this. They're doing it the right way. They're not afraid of anything. So kudos to those guys. But guess what? Those guys are going to get left home for the playoff because Ohio State's fan base is so big and they're so popular and they draw such great TV ratings. We heard Lincoln Riley this week say, basically when all this was going on in the Big Ten, we heard Lincoln Riley say, man, I'm so appreciative to the Big 12 for having the foresight to plan in all these open dates and all this flexibility, and there's a makeup date at the end. They've needed every one of those is what the deal was, and who knew the Big 12 could be the cutting edge of college football? I sure didn't. I also heard a question on the Lincoln Riley Zoom call this week that brought up a great point. This is it. This week is it. Season finale, game number 10. OU has played 9 games, number 10, and of course number 11, the championship game right around the corner. I mean, this is crazy. Barring another microburst of the virus, who'd have thought that this season would go off like this, like Paul Rudd? Not me. I didn't think we'd get here. I didn't think we'd be going into week 10, basically, of the regular season, looking for the 10th game of the season. This is amazing that they've been able to pull this off.
Well, yes, John, and conversely, in complete opposition to the Big Ten, you look at what the Big 12 has been able to do, and I think they've had, 3 games? Has it only been 3 games postponed or canceled for the conference this season? Regardless, the Big 12 has had as successful a handling of this entire situation with the pandemic as any conference across all of college football. And so you look at what they have done versus what the Big 10 has done, and the Big 10, right, you mentioned it at the top, John. The Big Ten was first through the wall on everything. They were the first one to set a revised schedule. They were the first one to say, we're not going to play. They were the first one to say, okay, we're going to establish a 21-day COVID-19 protocol where players aren't eligible to come back unless they've been in the protocol for at least 3 weeks. And the Big 12, what they did was essentially exactly the opposite. They were one of the last conferences to decide that whether or not they were going to play. In fact, I believe, John, I think the consensus opinion is that the entire FBS season really hinged on the Big 12's decision, because if you had 3 Power 5 conferences out and 2 in versus 3 in and 2 out, one was going to force the other's hand, and the Big 12 was kind of the swing vote there. So the Big 12 was one of the last conferences to decide that they were going to play football. The Big 12 was one of the last conferences to set a new schedule. And the Big 12 didn't really set any particular guidelines for COVID-19. They left that up to the schools to determine how they were going to address outbreaks within the program and positive tests and contact tracing and all that good stuff. So, I'm not saying the Big 12 did it better than anyone else, John, but I think it's safe to say that the Big 12 has at least put their teams in a better position for success and in a better position with regard to their standing with the College Football Playoff Committee than the Big 10 has. And all you need for evidence of that is the fact that Iowa State, 2-loss Iowa State with a 17-point home loss to Louisiana, is sitting at number 7 in the nation right now with a very real shot at the college football playoff if they knock off Oklahoma. And the Sooners are right there too at number 11. Should they beat Iowa State, they'll certainly be in the conversation as well.
Okay, let's talk about wide receivers, Parker. One is Emeka Egbuka. He announced this week, after getting home from his unofficial visit to OU, that he's committing on Friday. The number 1 wide receiver in the nation just went to an OU game, guys. Are you with me? Hung out with Caleb Williams all weekend. You with me? And now he's going to commit? Parker, it's got to be good news for OU, right?
You would think so, John. And the timing of this announcement, especially given how secretive and how covert Emeka Egbuka has been throughout this entire process, I would say the timing is a great sign if you're a member of Sooner Nation. And he's going to choose between Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Washington. Look, I think everybody just kind of views Washington as the token hometown representative. Egbuka is obviously from the state of Washington. So it's going to be either the Buckeyes or the Sooners. And I don't want to tip anything off, John, but I do have some intel that suggests that Ohio State is not at all confident they're going to land Emeka Egbuka. And you combine that with the fact that he was just in Norman this last week, it all paints a pretty encouraging picture for Oklahoma fans.
If he's not a homebody. If he's a homebody, he'll probably stick with Washington. We don't know yet. As you said, he's been pretty radio silent. The other wide receiver I want to talk about is Spencer Jones. Who? Well, he's OU's holder on place kicks. He had a big announcement today, Parker. What we heard from Lincoln Riley about Spencer Jones last week, which I thought was very prescient timing on your part because you asked the question. Tell us about it. Tell us about the big news today for Spencer Jones.
Thanks, John. It's like I have a crystal ball, isn't it? But no, on the real, Spencer Jones was placed on scholarship today. And of course, he is the holder for the place kicks for Gabe Burkich, redshirt senior, spent 2 years at Liberty before transferring to Oklahoma in 2018. And this is now the second consecutive year that Oklahoma has placed their holder, a senior walk-on scholarship. They did it for Connor McGinnis at the beginning of last season. So very much a testament to Spencer Jones's work ethic. And, you know, you heard what Lincoln Riley said. And if you didn't hear, you can go read a transcript of what he said in the story that we posted about Spencer Jones. But Lincoln Riley essentially said, hey, you got to have guys like that in your program, guys whose contributions aren't necessarily going to show up in the box score and on the stat sheet, but who are in there every day setting a good example for the younger guys. And Spencer Jones and Tanner Schaefer were two guys he cited as prime examples of that. Now, Spencer Jones only has 2 catches as a collegian. They both came at Liberty. One of them you may remember. It was the game-clinching touchdown catch when Liberty went to Waco and beat Baylor in 2017, 48-45. That was the last pass he caught at the collegiate level. But in his 3 seasons at Oklahoma, 2 of which he's been on the field for, it's clear that he's left an impression beyond his contributions on the field. Lincoln Riley obviously recognized that and rewarded him with a scholarship.
Yeah, these are my favorite stories. Anytime a kid walks on and then is awarded a scholarship. Huge, not just for the kid. It's prestigious for the kid, but, you know, I don't think a lot of college kids are paying their own way to school. It's the parents. The parents are like, oh my God, you did it. You got that scholarship. Thank you. We get $40,000 back or $20,000, whatever the tuition might be. It's a great story. And it's cool too. I saw one a few years ago where they did an onside kick and they had a note taped to the ball or something. And the guy caught the ball and recovered the onside kick and then looked in it and said, you're on scholarship. And everybody just started, you know, throwing water on the kid. It was awesome. I love those stories. Lincoln Riley, you made mention of it. He said their kids like this are vital. Having kids that are, what did he use the word like selfless or something like that. These are, and he's 100% right. You need guys to fill out your roster that are not all about me, not going to score a bunch of touchdowns. So cool story for OU football, for Spencer Jones and certainly for his family. Allsooners.com if you want to read more. There is no movement this week in the college football playoff. I think we're starting to expect that at some point, but to me, that's a strong indicator that even if OU beats Iowa State, they're definitely not getting into the playoff. You don't get into the playoff from the number 11 spot, and that's where OU is for the 3rd straight week. Up next on the SI Sooners podcast. So where do you think Alex Grinch is going? Hey, are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman or a car dealership in Oklahoma City or a restaurant in Edmond, or maybe you're a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you just want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Well, then consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at all_Sooners. You can follow SI Sooners on Twitter at all_Sooners. We encourage you to do that because that's where all the news and stuff happens. No BS like you'll find on me and Parker's personal Twitter accounts, although we do post all our news there as well. Find Parker at Parker Thune for all the good BS, and for even more BS, I'm at John E. Hoover. Our website, allsooners.com. Again, we're a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. Content is free, no memberships, no subscriptions, no credit cards. I like saying this. Just click and enjoy. Find the video version of this here podcast on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. And remember now, I need your help. I need to build the other up-and-coming John Hoover channel because this one's got to go away. YouTube and Google tell me that this channel's got to go away, so the other one's got to grow. Click right here and subscribe to that channel. And all the other stuff, everything I post goes up there first anyway. So do that. Jump over there and just please subscribe. Really appreciate it. We talked earlier, I guess on Sunday's podcast, about Shane Beamer going to South Carolina. We knew then that it was happening. Well, he was formally introduced on Monday. Hey, turns out we were wrong, Parker. He is coming back to Norman. He's actually back right now. He's helping OU prep for West Virginia. And, of course, he's going to be around next week for the Iowa State game in the Big 12 Championship. I watched his whole introductory press conference, okay? I got to say, dude absolutely crushed it in terms of a press conference. But anyway, it was cool to hear him talk about why he was intent on coming back. I was surprised. Here's a guy who's going to be the head coach in the SEC, like tomorrow. I mean, he currently is the head coach, but he's going to finish up his duties with OU first as an assistant coach. He's the tight ends coach, basically. He's the H-backs coach. He's going to oversee some special teams for the next 2 weeks rather than get a running start at South Carolina. I love that. And I love his reasons, which are, I just told all these South Carolina players I'm all about commitment, committing myself to you. And he said something along the lines of, that wouldn't be fair for me to say that and then leave those OU guys high and dry. He mentioned that a couple of times. I thought that was very, very telling. And we heard from Jeremiah Hall yesterday about how much love and respect that those guys have for each other. They both got emotional a little bit talking about each other. But I wrote a column today. I couldn't let a good thing ride. I wrote a column today saying that the next branch of Lincoln Riley's coaching tree will be Alex Grinch, and it'll happen sooner rather than later. Parker, I have kind of an insider who told me today that there will be a couple of job openings coming up this weekend, and Grinch may indeed be a candidate for one of those. What do you think?
Well, it makes sense, John. It only makes sense, right? Alex Grinch is currently at the helm of one of the most impressive defensive resurgences across the entire college football landscape. This Oklahoma defense was an absolute joke a year ago. Or, I'm sorry, 2 years ago. To a lesser degree, a year ago. But this 2020 season has really been the turning point for Alex Grinch. And you think about going up this weekend to Morgantown, the last time Oklahoma was in Morgantown. John, you remember the final score of that game in 2018? Yeah. 59-56. That's how bad Oklahoma's defense was at that point in time. And you can bet, I would bet a good amount of money, that there is not going to be more than 20 points on the board from West Virginia when the final horn sounds at Milan Puskar Stadium this weekend when the Sooners go up and visit the Mountaineers. Alex Grinch, by all accounts, is one of the hottest names on the coaching carousel, and with good reason, because what he has been able to do in just 2 seasons at Oklahoma is truly remarkable. He's got this defense in a better place, as I said on our last podcast, than it's been in at least a decade. And it is so night and day different from the Mike Stoops era, both in terms of what you see on the field, in terms of their productivity, but also their mentality, the way that they floated the ball, the way that they're finally able to create turnovers, John. And Alex Grinch is a guy that's a head coach in the making, and I think everybody can kind of tell. His days at Oklahoma, he's not going to be here for the next decade. He's not. And Oklahoma fans have to just prepare themselves for that reality. At some point in time, there's going to be a very, very big name program out there that comes calling and wants to interview Alex Grinch for their head coaching job and potentially wants to bring him in as their next head coach. And at that point in time, look, he's only 40 years old. He's older than Lincoln Riley, granted, but he's still very much a young guy in terms of what collegiate head coaches generally look like. He's a part of the younger demographic, and so he's only got room to go higher and higher up the totem pole, and that's what he's going to do before long. I would expect that either this offseason or next offseason, Alex Grinch is seriously exploring the next move beyond his tenure here at the University of Oklahoma.
You want your offensive and defensive coordinators to stick around. You want them to establish things and relationships with high school coaches and programs and get their system in and establish that kind of. But you don't want to stick around too long. You do not want your defensive coordinator and your offensive coordinator to hang around for a decade. It means one of two things. Either you're not very good and nobody wants to hire them, or you're just too scared to let them to say something and fire them. I'm just saying. So you mentioned the defensive improvements, the resurgence. My man Colby Daniels, former colleague of mine at the franchise, had the most telling tweet earlier this week. And let me just say, I saw on Facebook after Colby posted this that somebody just took their little cursor and copied and pasted all his numbers that he went and looked up, and they posted it on their Facebook tweet and said, look at what these numbers I found, everybody. And took it as their own damn work. And that makes me mad, man. That's plagiarism, even on stupid Facebook. So get it right, people. Give Colby Daniels credit. And when you steal somebody else's information, give them credit. Give them the due that they deserve. Anyway, I'm stealing Colby's stuff, but I'm giving him the credit. Listen to these numbers, okay? OU defense in 2018. These are the NCAA rankings, all right? 2018, OU ranked 114th. Last year, 38th, which is amazing. This year, so far, 14th. So 2 years under Alex Grinch, from 114 to 14. Good Lord. Scoring defense, 2018, OU was 101 under Mike Stoops and Ruffin McNeil in 2018. Last year, 64, which is amazing. This year, so far, 30th. So they went from 101 to 30 in 2 years under Alex Grinch. Third down defense, 2018, 119th in the country. Last year, 17th, which is unbelievable. This year, 5th in the country. I can't believe these rankings. Red zone defense, red zone touchdowns. OU 2018, dead last, guys, number 130. Last year, not very good. It was really bad for most of the year, but they straightened it up. Last year's final ranking was 99th in red zone touchdowns allowed. This year, it's not perfect, but it's 53rd. Still twice as good as it was last year, which is crazy. Takeaways, 2018, 121st in the country. 2019, 121st in the country. 2020, which hasn't been very good, but they've got a lot lately. They're up to 38th this year. 121st to 38th. And then sacks. Listen to this. 2018, 49th in the country. Last year, 21st. This year, 4th in the country. Guys, if you think Oklahoma's defense hasn't turned a corner or hasn't even arrived, I think they've arrived. I'm just saying, I think they've arrived. I asked Alex Grinch about it today, and I asked all his players on the Zoom calls today about his desire to be a head coach. And I asked those guys, the players, what makes him so special in his 2 years at OU. Ronnie Perkins said they attack every day like it's game day. Trey Norwood said they're playing to the bottom line, which is basically they strain to the football and they try to be physical and they get turnovers as much as they can. He said Grinch has changed the culture and the mindset for the players. And then Brian Asamoah said, he also used the word mindset. He said the mindset at OU is to be elite. And he said Grinch teaches them if you can't do it 100%, then don't do it, Parker.
Johnny, you cited all the statistics, and they're impressive, but I think what really impresses me the most about Alex Grinch and listening to the way that the players describe the way that he has been able to reshape the Oklahoma defensive philosophy and help them evolve as players and as a unit over the last 2 seasons, it says so much about his leadership, the fact that you see everybody buying in and committing 100% to the process and to changing the culture and to following Alex Grinch's lead. Because think about it, John, we haven't heard a whisper of conflict out of that OU locker room. And that's uncommon enough in collegiate locker rooms across the country. But when you think about everything that Oklahoma has endured, how maligned that defense has been, even earlier this season, when they opened Big 12 play with consecutive losses, then gave up 45 points to Texas and choked away a double-digit fourth quarter lead, there were people that were alarmed. Nobody within that locker room was at all alarmed. They were all extremely docile. They trusted that Grinch was going to get them where they needed to go. And over the last 5 games, you have seen a night and day different defense. And it speaks volumes for Alex Grinch's potential as a head coach one day. And like I said, Oklahoma is just going to have to resign to the fact that they've only got this guy for a certain amount of time. That clock is ticking. So you better take advantage of the time that you got with him and try to string together a national championship caliber team.
Up next on the SI Sooners podcast, Lincoln Riley, he went and did it again.
Hey there, loyal listeners. Parker Thune here with SI Sooners. Are you a business owner looking to get your product out there to the masses? Let's say you run a hotel in Norman, or a car dealership in Oklahoma City, or a restaurant in Edmond. Or maybe you're just a small online business who creates and sells OU merchandise, and you want Sooner Nation to come sample your wares. Consider advertising in this space right here on the SI Sooners podcast. SI Sooners reaches thousands of readers, viewers, and listeners literally every day, and the SI Sooners podcast is the ideal place to find your next customer. To advertise, send an email to allsoonersi@gmail.com or send us a direct message on Twitter at @all_Sooners.
Final segment of the SI Sooners podcast. Jalen Hurts, guys, is the starting quarterback for the Philadelphia Eagles. Not Carson Wentz, who just signed a $128 million extension and was the number 2 overall pick, but Jalen Hurts, who can't throw, runs too much, selfish, I don't know. I don't know how many different dozens of knocks you could concoct against Jalen Hurts. All I know is the kid wins. Now, he didn't win Saturday because he came in like the fourth quarter, or Sunday, I guess. He came in the fourth quarter. But the plays that he made on the field encouraged Doug Peterson, the Eagles coach, to say, I need to bench that guy, and I need to give that guy more snaps. Jalen Hurts has played in some Wildcat stuff. He's done some situational stuff, kind of a change of pace, a Taysom Hill kind of thing. I think the kid's an NFL quarterback. I do. Is he a long-term all-pro type solution that's going to lock it down for 10, 12 years? No, probably not. But the way Carson Wentz has been playing, he needs a fire lit under him, and Jalen Hurts just brought the matches. So I wrote a story about that when it broke on Monday, and Caroline wrote a story about the Sooners in the NFL that she covers every week. She puts down all the stats, starts, snaps, every stat that the guys compile, every Sooner in the NFL this week. She does an unbelievable job. Well, the story this week for her, it's topped by, kind of a topical story of the week. The story this week was easy. It was OU's 3 quarterbacks in the NFL that are now starting. All 3 guys threw a touchdown pass last week, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, and Jalen Hurts. Well, now all 3 of them are starting this week. So it's a crazy thing, and it's just unbelievable that Lincoln Riley now has 3 quarterbacks. His first 3 seasons as the head coach at OU, 17, 18, 19. The quarterback from each one of those teams is now starting in the NFL. Guys, this is unheard of. It's unprecedented. A couple of award nominations came out this week. I would say both were a little bit unexpected. Drake Stoops, up for the Burlsworth, nominated. Well, he's not going to win it, but it's a little bit less expected than the other one, which is Calvin Thibodeau, who is definitely deserving, but it's really unexpected to see his name, the defensive tackles coach, on the Frank Broyles Award for the top assistant coach. Parker, what did you, especially with sharing the defensive line duties with Jamar Cain, and you see Jamar's guys are the ones who are really blowing up on the OU roster. Hats off to Calvin. He went out and signed the top 2 junior college defensive tackles in the country, and both those guys are playing their butts off this year. So, yeah, put him on the list. But what did you make of the awards? There's a couple of others that are out we'll get to in a second.
Yeah, well, Calvin Thibodeau, obviously very deserving when you take a look at just how impactful the Sooners' defensive line has been, especially over the last 4 to 5 games. And we've talked about it time and time again, and we've broken that down, how in Alex Grinch's eyes particularly, all the havoc that you create on defense starts with strong play in the trenches up front. And you're seeing guys in Ronnie Perkins, Nick Benito, Isaiah Thomas, and Perion Winfrey every single week getting after the quarterback, stuffing the run, and setting the table for Oklahoma's defense as a whole to have a tremendous amount of success. And so when you look at what they've been able to do, and you take a look at the fact that their positional coach, I guess technically that you got 2 positional coaches there, Calvin Thibodeau on the interior and Jamar Cain on the outside, but Tibbs has been there longer than Coach Cain. This is Jamar Cain's first year, and so the inclination is probably to give the guy who's more experienced a little bit of credit. So not at all surprising to me that Calvin Thibodeau is the nominee for the Broyles Award. Very deserving. Obviously, there are a lot of guys around the country that are extremely deserving. That's a field of 56 coaches. So definitely No guarantee that Thibodeau becomes a finalist or is even in contention to win it at year's end. But it's another feather in the cap of Lincoln Riley, a former Broyles Award winner, to have a Broyles Award candidate this year on his staff, which is something that 6 out of the 10 teams in the Big 12 can't say. West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, the only other teams in the conference that sent a coach, or rather that have a coach in contention for the Broyles Award.
Yeah, now the Burlsworth Trophy, these are a couple of Arkansas-centric awards, by the way. Brandon Burlsworth played at Arkansas. I actually covered him and covered when he was killed in the car crash when I was with the Tulsa World, and he was an All-American, All-SEC candidate, offensive tackle. They named the award after him for being the best former walk-on in the country. Well, Drake Stoops probably not going to win that. I think Drake's got like 10 catches, 12 catches this year. You've got guys on that list who have 40, 50, 60 catches this year, and running backs and quarterbacks and defensive linemen who are making huge impacts for their team. So, but it's nice to be nominated for that. Baker Mayfield won it twice, and the year he won the Heisman, he didn't win it because he got arrested, oddly enough, in Fayetteville. Just what a weird thing. Anyway, he probably ultimately spent too much time in Fayetteville, if you ask me. But Spencer Rattler is one of like 37 semifinalists for the Davey O'Brien Award, top quarterback. And then Gabe Burkich is one of 3,000 finalists for the Lou Groza Award. I will confirm that I did include Gabe Burkich on my list for the 3 finalists in the Lou Groza Award. My hope is he hasn't had like the best season, which is what he did last year. He had the best season. But my hope is they'll make up for leaving him off of last year's finalist list, which is just crazy. But he should be on it this year. We'll see. An interesting story came up this week, a sad one, Parker. I wrote about the life and death of Fred Akers. Okay? When I saw that he had died, the first person I thought of was, I got to get Barry Switzer on the phone. He actually played with Barry Switzer at Arkansas. He coached for Darrell Royal at Texas as an assistant coach. And then an interesting factoid, before he took the Texas job, he coached Wyoming for 2 years. And one of those games, the last game at Wyoming, before he took the Texas job, was against OU in the 76 Fiesta Bowl. Then he coached Texas for 10 years. And if you think about it, numbers-wise, he kind of had his way with Switzer early on, won 4 out of the first 5 Red River rivalry meetings. But Barry evened things out, obviously, a little bit later. I didn't realize this. They were great friends, Parker. Barry never really got along with Darrell Royal. I think Royal was kind of an old fuddy-duddy for the 70s, if you think about it. An old stickler for this and that. And here comes Switzer. He's a rogue, and he's kind of sassy, and he's kind of cocky, and he's a young coach who doesn't mind bending the rules a little bit. And so Royal never really took to Barry, right? So then Texas hires Fred Akers. Turns out Akers and Switzer are good friends. I thought that was interesting. AllSooners.com. Barry told me Monday night that his relationship with Freddy, he called him, Parker, Fred Akers, he's known him obviously since they were in college together, played for the Razorbacks. He was 82 and had been suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia for a few years now, which is obviously really sad for sure. But I got to say, it's always fun to catch up with Barry about the old days, Parker. Okay, back to the future. We mentioned Emeka Egbuka this Friday, but Parker thinks Oklahoma is going to have a much bigger haul on and around and after National Signing Day next Wednesday. Parker, tell us all about it. First of all, we're going to have wall-to-wall coverage all day next Wednesday, and anything that comes up on Thursday and Friday, that's the early signing period. So bookmark it, allsooners.com. Parker, tell us the latest and give us some gut feelings about a couple of guys who you think are going to sign with Oklahoma eventually.
Yeah, John, well, obviously we're going to know where Emeka Egbuka is headed on Friday, so we will get a bit of an early glimpse at his decision before National Signing Day on Wednesday. Then you've got Bryce Foster signing on the 18th, Kamar Wheaton will sign on the 23rd, and Tristan Lee doesn't sign until January. So those are 4 of the 5 guys that are the big question marks for Oklahoma right now on the recruiting trail. Obviously, they've got 15 guys already committed. They may pick up another couple, looking at guys like Remington Strickland, the center out of Texas, and Jordan Gilbert, the safety out of Louisiana. They have an outside shot at landing a couple more on National Signing Day, but the big one to keep your eye on Wednesday is Savion Byrd, who is making a televised announcement of his commitment. LSU in contention, Auburn in contention, SMU in contention, and obviously the Sooners. And there's no clear indication right now if there's any particular direction that he's leaning. Now, I feel really good about Bryce Foster. I feel really good about Tristan Lee. Emeka Egbuka, there's a definite chance there, and as of right now, I would have to consider it likely that Oklahoma lands Egbuka as well, and I think they're in a great position for Wheaton. Bird is the one I'm not sure about, and so that's going to be the one that everybody's watching on Wednesday to see whether he chooses Oklahoma, whether he goes with the hometown school in SMU, or whether he decides to take his talents to SEC territory and join LSU or Auburn.
I will – maybe we got you covered. I'll put it this way. When I talked to him in August, Savion, I got the feeling that he was 100% OU. Now, kids change their mind and circumstances change and they take unofficial visits to other schools. So I get it if he's changed his mind. But when I talked to him in August, I was like, that kid, he's coming to OU. No doubt in my mind. So that would be something. That would be Tristan Lee, Savion Byrd, and Bryce Foster in the same class. Everybody's kind of talking about these wide receivers, which are amazing, but that's three really, really good linemen in one group. Would not surprise me to learn that those guys, when they do announce after signing day that they already signed with OU on December 16th, kind of a silent commit, kind of like Chandler Morris did last year. You remember that, Parker?
Yes, and that was big for Oklahoma. That was and I think it was Jeremiah Cradell the year before that, but there's always one guy on National Signing Day that makes a big splash when OU lands him.
Yeah. So we got basketball tonight. We're trying to get off this podcast so we can go watch the Sooners play at Xavier, 7 o'clock tonight. We're not going to get much of that game into this podcast, obviously, but I will say this. Kerry Manick, that's his dad or his uncle. Brady Manick, good Lord. That shows you how old I am. I covered those guys when they were in college. Brady Manick, 29 points in the season opener against UTSA. Austin Reeves, 32 the next game against TCU. Those guys rank 1 and 2 right now in Big 12 scoring. 1 and 2. So I wrote a story this morning, allsooners.com, asking if they've got some other guys on the roster who are going to break into that scoring role, maybe give those guys a night off once in a while. Davion Harmon, I think, is averaging 17 a game, for instance. He had 22 in the opener, but this guy can break out at any time. I love Davion's game, and he's really polished up his shot. Kirkweth is another guy. He's averaging 9 right now, so you don't expect a whole ton of points. But I think he's a guy that could really exploit a favorable matchup. He's so athletic, and he's got such long arms. And then I think it's just a matter of time before our guy Trey Phipps from right here in Tulsa breaks out with like a 25-point night. When you can shoot like that, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And really, it's a matter of not trying to do too much as a freshman. Kruger said this week that as long as Trey Phipps plays the role that he's always played, which is catch and shoot, it's a great role, isn't it? If you do that, don't try to overanalyze your role in college basketball. Don't try to be more than what you've always been. He says he'll be just fine and he'll really contribute. Parker, who do you like on this roster to help out Manick and Reeves with the scoring load down the line?
I got my eyes on Alondas Williams, John, a guy who really came on strong towards the second half of last season. Is just so athletic, maybe the most athletic guy pound for pound on this Oklahoma roster. He's got a really high ceiling, and I think you're going to start to see him unlock some of that potential that he flashed towards the end of last year. Another guy that can really, really shoot the ball is Umoja Gibson, the transfer from North Texas, whom we saw just a little bit in the season opener against UTSA. But I would imagine that Lon Kruger starts to work him into a larger role. He gets more opportunities from beyond the arc and starts to make a real difference as a guy that is every bit as talented a shooter as Brady Manick, not necessarily as talented a scorer, but you give him an open shot from the three-point line, he's probably not missing it.
OU at Xavier tonight. That's going on in about an hour from now. Next home game Saturday versus Florida A&M, 4 o'clock. Parker will be at Lloyd Noble Center. I'm going to be in Morgantown. We hope. Listen to the SI Sooners podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, or wherever you get your podcasts, or on your Amazon-enabled device. Just ask Alexa, please, Alexa, play for me the SI Sooners podcast. Or go to allsooners.com. That's our website. Click on the player and listen on your device, your phone, your tablet, your computer. And, of course, you can always watch the video version on my YouTube channel, John Hoover Media. For Parker Thune, I'm John Hoover. See you guys.